I did, right. Somebody with prepared questions. I'll get you a glass of water.
No, I don't need water. I just had lunch.
Oh, okay. Then I'll...
Have you been around Boston at all? Have you seen the area? Or?
Oh, sure, I know Boston well.
Yeah?
Yeah, because I'm basically an actor. Not that you'd know it, after all the strange things that I do, but I've been here, worked here in the theatre before, on 2 occasions. The last time I was here was with a play called As a Girl in My Soup, which, do you remember, was a movie which Peter Sellers did. I unfortunately didn't, but that's what happens in our business. You originate something, and you make it a success, and then they give that role to somebody else, which is an older business. So I know Boston well, and love it. It's one of probably your most beautiful city in the States, I think. I can't think of a more beautiful one. Good shops, too. Far too good. Spend far too much money. Yeah. Come on, for Christ's sake, say something, otherwise I'll go.
Are you going to have a
you.
second volume in your autobiography?
Have a what? Another one?
Yeah, I love the first one.
Good. Well,
great anecdotes.
the reason I wrote the autobiography was that I was doing a series called Wurzel Gummidge, which you're not allowed to see. I'll talk about that later. You're not allowed to see it because the powers that be are convinced that Americans can't understand English. So they say, no, we're not going to have Wurzel Gummidge because nobody will understand it. The fact that I played it to hundreds and hundreds of Americans, all who've understood every single word and loved it, and says, why don't we get it? That's the way it goes. So I was doing it for a new producer when Southern Television lost their franchise. And I was doing, working for Southern, and then Southern lost their franchise to operate, so I had no producer. And so a new producer who had directed and produced a series called, which you've seen in America on PBS, called Peter Bowles, Irish. Oh yes, the Irish
RM?
RM.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, it's a classic English story. And it was very successful, and he made this series. And he wanted to make Wurzel Gummidge in Ireland. But unfortunately, his co-partner was a very irascible American gentleman who came back to the States and on interview on television said what he thought of Lord Harlech, who is the head of HTV. And Lord Harlech was shown this within about 48 hours of him making it, and Lord Harlech said, thank you, pull the plug, and pulled the plug on 2 years of series. So we were stuck without any producer. And so we got a new producer, eventually, in New Zealand, and I made the last 3 years of Wurzel Gummidge in New Zealand. But in that period, where we weren't filming, as I was expecting to, I wrote the first volume of Moon Boots and Dinner Suits, my autobiography. So the next one will be when I'm next out of work,
Okay.
which probably be any time now, I think.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, you've got a bit of paper there. You must
Yeah.
have something written on it.
Okay, fair enough. Start with number 1. Did you follow Doctor Who at all before your time with the Doctor? And,
No.
How about since?
No. Next. No, I must admit I didn't. I was married to a lady called Jean Marsh, you may remember, from upstairs, downstairs, and she appeared in Doctor Who. And while we were married, she said, oh, you must watch me in Doctor Who, and so that was the first time that I watched it. And I liked it, and I've since seen early sort of specials and got William Hartnell's, and I thought they were superb, and I loved them, especially the very, very early ones. And after that, I didn't really watch because I was busy doing it myself. And at that time, the output was pretty extensive, and so when I had time off, I wasn't working in the program, then I'd get the hell out of the country and go to my place out in the sunlight in the Balearic Islands, where I've had a home for years. And so I didn't watch it. Pat Troutman was a great personal friend of mine, so I used to occasionally see Pat because I was fond of him, but I'm not a sci-fi buff at all. And so I don't really watch it, and I haven't watched it much since.
I was watching you in A Virtual Murder a little while ago.
Where the hell did you see that?
I get stuff from England.
Ah! Now you're talking. That is what I've wanted to do for
That was
years.
really good.
Yeah.
I suppose you might want to give a little bit of storyline to them, but
Yeah.
my question is, have you been keeping busy doing other television and film besides that?
That is my intention. He's talking about a program called Virtual Murder, which was a series of 6 one-hour episodes, directed by and produced by Brian Degas, and Judy Garland's ex-musical director, Mr. Robertson, and Harry Robertson. He eventually got arthritis and he couldn't hold a pen and he couldn't work a typewriter, and so he became a film producer. I don't quite see the connection. And they made this series, and it was very kooky and very way out and very strange. But they were, being the producers they chose people that you would never have thought of to cast. I mean, people like Alfred Marks, a wonderful Jewish character actor, hadn't been seen for years. Suddenly they haul him out there, and his wife, who played the lady who ran the cafe at the time, was working. I played an extremely ancient Basque, which is in northern Spain, a terrorist. He used to own brothels and pornographic bookshops, but he got a bad conscience when they told him they only had a few more months to live. And so he went around blowing all the shops up and setting everything on fire and talking in rhyme on the telephone to everybody. And it was a magnificent part. I mean, just the sort of thing I've been looking for years, to play something utterly different from the sort of thing that I've been playing before. And the producer said, "You are going to have a whole new career when this is shown." And I said, "Well, you better hurry up because I'm practically dead of old age. So this whole new career better start now." And it didn't start at all because unfortunately the series was not well received by the press, and so by the time mine was shown, which was episode 4, I think, by the time that was shown, the critics weren't watching it. So it didn't do any good at all, other than I've made a show tape of it, and of course now it's seen by directors who say, "Good Lord, I didn't know you could do things like that," because I played a Spaniard, a Basque, and I had wonderful death scenes, and not the usual comic Who or Wurzel or whatever. So I'm glad you saw it.
Oh, it was very good.
I think you might be one of the only ones who ever did it.
I'm pretty sure. So besides that, have you done anything else as well?
That's the sort of thing I'm doing. Yes,
Okay, very good.
I did a series called Rear Window for Channel 4, which is our sort of rather revolutionary series, a station, which I played an extremely old Jewish medieval doctor. It's a classic children's writer, a book it is. That's the sort of work that I want to do. But unfortunately, for the last few months, I've been very heavily involved in a stage show with, you know who Anthony Newley is?
Sure.
Well, of course, you know him. He's probably better known in America than in England, although he's English, because he was for 23 years working in Vegas. My son, who's an extremely excellent actor called Sean, when he asked me what I was doing, I said, "I'm doing Leslie Brickus' new musical called Scrooge with Anthony Newley." And he said, "Who's Anthony Newley?" He'd never heard of him. And he's a very hot young actor. So it was very surprising. But we did you may have heard, an enormous business. It was wildly successful and is now coming to America. I've been asked to come, but I don't know whether they'll let me because of the green card problem. But I hope to. I've been asked to go to Australia where I have no problems with it, with Tony Newley. And what else? So that's kept me busy for the last 5 months. Now I'm here. I'm doing quite a lot of visits to the United States for conferences and for helping BBC Enterprises to push Doctor Who out on a real sort of heavy sale. I think endeavouring at last to get somebody who will take it out not on a sort of push-me-pull-you basis like PRS does, but a regular cable station or a regular syndication. So I think that's what they're trying to do, and I'm kind of over here quite a lot to help them promote it. And then I start, which is quite good news, the Doctor Who on radio, which you've probably heard about.
Yes,
It's
good question.
a bit of a rumour about that. It was my idea. When I heard that it wasn't going to go on television, I decided that I'd do it on radio. And so the Brigadier and I are doing it, the Brig, Nick Courtney. He's going to do it too. He's a very experienced radio performer, as I am. And I really sort of started my successful career on radio. I had a show called The Navy Line, which ran for over 20 years, which is the longest running radio comedy show in the world, I think. And so we're looking forward to that. We're doing that in April. And that's just made onto cassettes in packs, and it'll be sold as a 2.5-hour story in 3 cassettes, and that'll be sold as one package. were originally going to do it on broadcast, but of course that would be frightfully stupid to do it on broadcast because everybody would then record it onto their own personal machines and then we wouldn't make any money out of it. So it's now sold straight onto cassette, and then of course the cassettes will eventually be played by radio stations.
Do you have a release date for that at all?
No, not when it's coming out, because enterprises being enterprises, you don't know how long they're going to take to do anything. They take 5 and 10 years to make up their mind.
So you do have a script at least?
Hi, Kim. Hi, BJ. Come and sit down, love. We're just having a casual press conference. These are friends of mine from Columbus, Ohio, where they've now opened a magnificent new bookshop, specializing in my books. And others. Yes, right, next.
Other than the things I've mentioned before, I also know you, well, I've actually seen Where's Government, you've been shown in Canada, we're from Canada, and I've been shown there for quite a while.
Yes, actually it's very interesting. I'm having a lawsuit about that.
Oh, really?
Because I've never received one brass farthing from Canada for my residuals. And so we had a very friendly guy who gave us the breakdown on, in fact, how much they'd actually shown. How many series did they show? How many programs? Lots?
It was on for at least a year, I know that much.
Incredible.
Every day.
You're from Canada as
Yeah,
well?
they went through the New Zealand episodes.
They did the New Zealand ones?
That's right.
Only those?
Oh, and the original.
Oh, and the original?
All the series.
My God, I haven't had a shilling, would you believe it? I told you about that. Incredible. I haven't had a shilling from them, I haven't had a shilling from Australia, for Wurzel, or from Holland, or from about 6 or 7 countries. They just bury them. And that's it. Oh, that's interesting. Where are you from in Canada?
Montreal.
Oh, yeah.
Toronto.
Yes. Oh, you're from Toronto? Ah, well, of course, I've been to Kitchener. Were you there?
47, yeah, I was there.
Were you? What year was that?
1985.
85. My God. Yeah, I enjoyed that enormously. I know, but while I was there, somebody tried to convert me to being an Amish. Amish or a Mennonite. I never know which you've got. Mennonites or Amish. What are you? Mennonites. Mennonite. Yeah, Mennonites. But lovely. I really enjoyed it. And I've spent a lot of time with people, and I was fascinated by them. But they did try to convert me. They said I lived in a wicked place, London. It's a very wicked place, brother. Yeah. How's that charming Oriental guy who ran the conference?
Derwin.
He works for the government as an auditor now.
Is he?
That's right.
Is he still in Kitchener?
No, he's in Toronto as well.
Yeah, and his sister?
Christine is going to university in London, Ontario.
Is she really? Would you, if you can get a message through, give them my love and best wishes?
I'll pass
They're
it on.
absolutely charming. I really enjoyed myself there, and the food is so good. Excellent, bro. Yeah, any other questions? Gentlemen, come on, somebody at the back there.
Oh, what I was going to ask you about is, I've also seen you in, I'm a big fan of Carry On movies. I'm sure you were in, I think, Cleo and Cowboy and...
I'm afraid so, yes. Yes.
Do you have any good memories or bad memories of those films?
To get through them as quickly as possible. No, they were fun. That would be wrong to say that. They were great fun, but I never wanted to do them seriously. I only did it as a joke because I knew the producer very well. And he said, just can you do a quick cameo? And so the other day, they rang me up, and my agent rang me up. It's a rather sad story, actually. He said, I've got great news for you. I've just fixed you in a marvelous movie. And I said, what? He said, this is Columbus. And I thought, my God, because this is Gerard Depardieu, who's the hottest film star in the world now, after Manon de Source, his 2 or 3 wonderful films, and Cyrano de Bergerac. And I thought, that's marvelous. So how big a role? He said, oh, it's just a cameo, but it's lovely. And I'm sending you the script, and you'll get it tomorrow morning. So the next morning I was awake at 5:30, waiting for the mail to come. And there was a thump as it came through the door, and I opened it up, and there it was, Carry On, Columbus. And this was the Carry On movie, which is not the same thing at all. And I was absolutely heartbroken, but I read it, and it was quite funny. And I rang the director and producer and said, I really wasn't frightfully keen on doing this, not after all these years. And they said, well, for God's sake, do, because everybody else is dead. You're practically the only one that's alive if you think of the cast and the company. I mean, the large majority of them were dead. He said, we've got to have some of the old originals. So would you do it? So yes, I did. And I went on the first day to the makeup room. And there was one of our greatest actresses, very, very hot at the moment, enormously successful. called Maureen Lipman. And Maureen Lipman was there having makeup put on, and I said, hello, love, what are you doing here? She said, the same as you, darling, trying to make a buck. And I couldn't believe it, that she was going to be in a Carry On Columbus. And I said, well, I'm very surprised that you do this. And she said, well, the condition of the British film business, naturally I do it. And we went onto the floor, and there was an archbishop standing there mumbling away with his lines. And I said to Maureen, I recognize that fellow, don't you? So she said, yes, and it was T.P. McKenna. Well, you probably wouldn't know who T.P. McKenna is, but he's one of our top dramatic actors. And there he was playing two lines in Carry On Columbus. So I thought, well, that sets it well for the rest of the film. Everybody that speaks a line is going to be a name, and so it should be, you know, something good to work with. As it transpired and turned out, it was terrible. It was diabolical, because you can't get people to do what other people do and originate. You can't get a man to be a part that Kenneth Williams originates, or with Charlie Hawtrey or any of that team. They can't do it. And they tried that with Doctor Who without real success, and it wasn't fair on the actor. That was the master, because Roger Delgado was brilliant, and you couldn't better him. So when they gave the part to Anthony Ainley, it was a miserable thing to give somebody to do, because he had to copy Roger Delgado, which of course nobody could do. He wanted to be himself. So it would have been much better if he'd been able to originate his own interpretation of the role. So I didn't really enjoy it as much as I should do. I enjoyed getting the money, that was good. Yes, now, gentlemen, please, I'm sure you're...
You tell us something about a series you were supposed to have made with Barry Letts that never got off the ground. I can't recall the name off the top of my head.
That's interesting, yes, that's Star Watch.
That film.
Yeah, Star Watch. Well, Star Watch looked like being terribly good, and it's still on the brink. Everybody is interested in it because it's superbly set out, and it's a very green subject. And it was a fellow called Christopher Leach, who worked originally with Thunderbirds and the Anderson outfit. And Chris Leach set this thing up. And it looked practically good because he had marvelous brochures, and he had, did you see any of the brochures? Did you see the layout? No. Well, they were wonderful, and he spent fortunes on them. But of course, he made a terrible error. That old thing is that you must not run before you learn to walk. And he ran very fast with this, and spent lots of money on things he shouldn't have spent money on. The result was that a producer would say, I don't want to be told who's playing this. I'll do the casting, or my casting department will do the casting. I don't want to be told this is written for Jon Pertwee and Pat Troutman and those people that he'd said, and he had photographs of them and so on. So they'd all collapsed, but because also it was extremely expensive. And but they are now reconsidering it, and because it has a very green basis, and of course with a green basis, anything is likely to get a good audience now, a good reaction. That's if they can afford it. So that's what they're working on now. But Barry Letts is writing, strangely enough, the radio show I've just been telling you about. He's going to write the first story, which he's now almost completed, I gather, which is wonderful news, because a lot of people don't know it, but Barry Letts wrote a lot of the Doctor Who's under the name of Guy Leopold. But he wasn't allowed to at the time, so he changed his name and called himself Guy Leopold, and wrote stories that he was producing. Thank God, because they were some of the best stories we did.
Damons.
The Damons was one, yeah.
Speaking of the Damons, how did you enjoy or whatnot about the Return to Devil's End?
Oh, very much. We laughed too much. And you can imagine getting us all back together with the Brig and John Levine and Richard Franklin. The only thing was missing was Katie. Katie Manning wasn't there. I mean, we wouldn't have got any work done at all if Katie wasn't there. And as it was, we drank a lot of beer and met a lot of mates that we'd known 20 years before. The Mad Monk, the director, came, and Chris, Barry. And it was a highly enjoyable couple of days. And it's now on sale here. David
Blaze.
Blake? Blaze. David Blaze, on his table, he's got them for sale. It's called Return to Devil's End. It's just a meeting of us all together. I said, this is ridiculous. I said to Keith Barnfather, who produced it. I said, you'll ask me questions, I won't know the answers to this at all. Hopeless, I can't remember that. And he said, oh, don't worry, it'll all come to life because we've got all these photographs. And so every time he opened up this book of photographs and we looked, I said, oh my God, you remember that? And then we were off ad-libbing and reminiscing about it. So it was fun, very good.
There seemed to be a conscious thought in your era to make the show more adult. That Barry Letts and Terrence Dicks were trying to make it appeal to a different audience than it did during the Hartnell and Troutman era. Is that
Well,
true? Or?
I don't know whether that's true because I personally thought that the early Bill Hartnell series, I thought they were very adult. I mean, they had it's family entertainment. Everything that I've been involved with has always been for family.
Right, yeah.
I don't say I do a show for kids. Wurzel Gummidge is all about a scarecrow who comes to life, and there are two little kids who are the only ones who know that he walks and talks and he can do what he likes, and he's in love with another scarecrow and Aunt Sally, and they understand it. And this was a children's book for years, very successful children's reader actually. 75% of our viewers, of 12.5 million viewers a week, were adult.
Right.
And Doctor Who, of course, is the same. You know, originally it was children's, well, it always has been children's time, but it's appreciated by a predominantly adult public.
Right. It seemed like they were trying to attack more political issues, though. That, you know.
Oh, I think they did.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that's quite true. They did. But remember too that in Bill Hartnell's time, they went back in history and they did
Right.
astonishing reversals to the historical periods, which were very successful and highly complicated and very well done too.
Yep.
When you think of the budget, it's just tons.
Yeah.
People often say, you know, you can't compare Doctor Who with Star Trek. You say, no, it is hard when you've got a difference of about $4.5 million.
Well, yeah. Well, that's what I've always liked about Doctor Who. They use their imagination.
Well, that's it.
creativity.
That's it, rather, because certainly in the early black and white ones, they were very clever because they just didn't show anything which looked bad, but by not showing it.
Yeah.
And Verity Lambert, the producer, she sadly has gone through the last 6 months of sheer torture because she produced and put on the air a TV series that you simply could not believe called El Dorado, which was about the expats living in the south of Spain. It was the most hysterical. Did you see it when you came to England?
I've seen it. It's terrible.
Well, it's better now. It's suddenly come to life. I never miss it now. Never. I used to watch it every night because it was so awful. I said, you've got to watch it. You've got, nobody can believe that anything is so badly acted. But now it's suddenly come to life and it's very, very good. And people can't miss it. They're ringing each other up saying, well, what happened? I told you that he was blah, blah, blah. And it's very much better.
Is this after the departure of Powell that's been improving? Or?
That's right.
Ah.
Yes.
Ah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm.
Understandable.
Yeah, the lady producer was sent on a very long holiday to Mars, I think. And Verity, of course, didn't have enough to do with it. And so other people have come in that have said, now, come on, let's really get a grip on this thing. And they got rid of some of the most appalling people. Yeah, next.
I have one. This is going to make a little noise, just to let people know.
Right.
Do you enjoy coming to conventions and meeting fans? Do you enjoy
That's very interesting. Well, is that a... It's not
It's
a video.
film.
It's a film.
It's real film. It's
Wow.
Super 8.
That's very modern. Yes, I do. I love it. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. Yeah, I spent about 4 years ago. I was touring around for Enterprises with the big coach, and where we carried Bessie with us, and we had all the monsters were on view in the coach, and we went to a different town and city on Wednesdays and on the weekends, and that way my wife and I really got to know America better than, I suppose, 85-90% of Americans, because we never went on the turnpike. We only went on the small side roads, and we really got to know the States. So that I enjoy enormously. You know.
The fans are nice to you when you go to these places, correct?
Wonderful, wonderful. There's going to come a time when they're going to throw things at me. They say, "Oh God, I've seen him. Get off." But up until that time comes, I shall enjoy it and always return whenever I can. It's a question of fitting them in with other commitments and other work.
Thank you.
Right.
You've worked with a lot of the doctors in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any opinions or stories to tell of any of the doctors?
No. Well, for obvious reasons, which is the thing that I always mention, which I will be later on. is that so if I said to you now, I thought that Patrick Troutman was the most god-awful actor I've ever known. He was terrible and unfunny and awful and embarrassing. And you say, oh, very interesting, and you write this all down and you put it on your video machines and you play it to all your friends. But 2 weeks later you have Patrick Troutman as your guest of honor, and somebody says, Jon Pertwee, we saw in Boston last week, and he said blah, 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 blah. He said, did he? Let me tell you about him. And you're off, and then it's war. So, no, you never ask one actor what he thinks of another actor. He'll give you a lie anyway. You never get a truthful answer.
Okay, then a sort of a sideways question on that might be a little easier to answer. What actor out there would you think would play a good doctor that hasn't yet?
Oh, that's easy. Jeffrey Bailden, I think, who plays the Crowman with me in Wurzel Gummidge. And did you ever see a magnificent series called Catweasel?
Yes.
Did any of you?
Yes.
You saw it, yeah. Because you're lucky you're in Canada, you get all these good shows. Catweasel was, it's a medieval period, and he played an old, real magic man, like a sort of, what's the name of them? Not Mercury, what's the hell's his name? What's the name of the magic man, the pointed hat?
Merlin.
Merlin, thank you very much. And he played a sort of Merlin character with a tame frog. And he was marvelous in it, so you know who he is. I'm trying to think of what else he's done. Anybody see the film called The House That Dripped Blood? Mine?
Yes.
Well, do you remember there was a man who sold me a vampire's cloak in an extraordinary shop? That's Jeffrey Bailden. He'd be a very good doctor, very different, but that's what you want. I think all Doctor Who should have the same sort of faces, you know, noses and crags and lines, things, not pretty young faces. And I think that, although he's a marvelous actor, but I think Peter Davison was rather miscast. I think he was too handsome, too good looking. You need a sort of craggy, old-fashioned face like Tom, and I mean, Tom looks like a sort of mad Harpo Marx. Yeah, something more.
Well, they said that the budgetary constraints made it Earthbound during your series. Was there really that much of a difference between filming Earth location versus planetary location?
I'm sorry, I don't really get your question.
Oh, well, in other words, Barry Letts said that when he went to you, they made it on Earth so that they wouldn't spend...
Yeah. Oh, yes, well, that's an age-old question, which I will have to cover in a few minutes again. They also asked, why did I want to be on Earth? Because my simile was, quote, 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 for the 1,000th time, there's nothing more alarming than coming home and finding a Yeti sitting on your loo in Wigan than in the Himalayas. You don't expect to find a Yeti sitting on the can in wherever, in Boston, but you do expect it in the Himalayas because that's where he lives. So I thought that it was much more alarming to have the threats coming to Earth rather than we going to extremely indifferent looking planets which look like gravel pits.
Right.
Which they were. Yeah.
What do you think that has made Doctor Who so special that fans have been continually watching it for over 30 years?
Love. They just love it. It's a very affectionate program. I mean, you can look at these ghastly mistakes, and people who don't know it look and say, "Oh my God! Look, you can see his feet with the Dalek or something." But people don't care. You know, they're fans of the program and they love it. I mean, you've got some fan meetings for a science fiction TV series. What the days was it called? What's a very, very old science fiction series that It's not Star Trek. No, that was brilliant in comparison. What?
Buck Rogers.
No.
Oh, there was Buck Rogers.
No.
How far back are we talking?
Oh, 30 years.
That's a good analogy because things were falling down on the sets of that.
That's right.
And
That's right. I mean, did you ever see a magnificent film called Plan 9 from Outer Space? Now, I tried for 3 years to get the rights of Plan 9 from Outer Space because I had this brilliant idea, which I still think is, of of making a TV series called The Making of Plan 9 from Outer Space. Because the man who made Plan 9 from Outer Space was the most extraordinary man who wore ladies' pajamas. Have you ever read about him? He went everywhere in ladies' pajamas, and he had a long moustache, long hair, and wore big drop chandelier earrings. A most extraordinary man. And he was straight as a die. He had as his companion an all-in wrestler who weighed about 40 stone, who was his sort of sidekick. And he had a...
The one who played the zombies.
That's exactly him, the one who played the
Yes.
zombie in Plan 9 and kept tripping over the tombstones and knocking them over. You know.
Ford Johnson.
What?
I think that was his name, Ford Johnson.
That's correct, that is his name. We see, obviously, a And anyway, I wanted to make this series based on that. And there wasn't any way that the producer would let us have the rights. Because he said, I'm going to make fortunes out of this thing for years and years and years. And now, people are still buying the videos of this like mad. He said, you've got to own a copy of Plan 9 from Outer Space. Ready? We off? You've got 3 more minutes.
Over here. I was in New Zealand and Australia this time last year,
Mm-hmm.
and I was put in touch with a lot of fans from Star Trek, and I was really amazed. There's only two television stations in New Zealand, and Hulu is very big there. Have you been to New Zealand or Australia?
Yes, many times. I was saying just before you came in that I was out in New Zealand for the making of 3 series of Wurzel Gummidge. We shot it in New Zealand, in Wellington, and I know it very well, and I know the setup. And when I tell you that Wurzel Gummidge was the most expensive series that has ever been done in New Zealand, and still is, and the New Zealanders still haven't seen it. That shows the condition of their television.
Yes.
They haven't shown it yet, and never will, obviously. No, because they haven't got round to getting the money together to pay for it. But we made it there with all New Zealand actors and New Zealand producers and everything else. But it made no difference. So theirs is in a parlor state, I'm afraid. Australia also, of course, financially are going through a very bad time. Okay. The idea actually with today, I gathered, was to sort of talk to you about your fan clubs and things like that. I mean, what we've been doing is just exactly what I'm going to go out and do now on the stage. So anyway, thanks very much indeed. And if you come up with any questions that you really want to ask, or you think will be of interest to your members, then please, at my talk, shout them out. Okay?
Thank you.
Right, thank you. Right, Tim.